Good afternoon, everybody. Chris Frew here with BioBuzz for episode number 55 of What's the Buzz, where we talk to ecosystem builders, which we, Jesse, you and I were talking about. The ecosystem builders for us are pretty broad. This industry takes a village to grow companies out of innovation and commercialization. So whether you're building a facility, running a facility, we also talk to investors and associations. A lot of people have to work together to go into this ecosystem. So I'm excited today to have a special guest, Dr. Jesse McCool, President and Chief Operating Officer of GBI Bio, talking about BioFlorida and the regenerative medicine boom. So Jesse, welcome.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate the time and the opportunity to be here.
Yeah, likewise. Excited for our conversation today. Before we jump in, for those of you just joining, I want to give a special thank you to one of our close partners, Heffron Company. They're a 104-year-old mechanical contractor and services company based here in Maryland, but supporting companies all across the Mid-Atlantic. And they have a special footprint in life sciences. So I often say, while we're here talking today about ecosystem building, they're literally the ones building the ecosystem, one facility at a time. And if you drive up and down I-270 or Maryland and across the Mid-Atlantic, it's a good shot. You're looking at a building that they're either servicing or have had a large hand in building. So they're an absolutely fantastic team. So thank you to Colin and the whole Heffron team for supporting BioBuzz and the work we do to help grow ecosystems. So Jesse, let's jump into today's conversation. How about we start off? Can you just do a quick introduction for our audience? Tell them a little bit about who you are and GBI.
Sure. Well, I am a 23-year veteran in the CDMO industry. I'm a scientist by training, but I've been in C-suite roles in CDMO for the last about 12 years. I've worked at, before GBI, I joined GBI in December of 2025, so just about 6 months ago. Prior to GBI, though, I was at 4 different CDMOs. So I've been around, been coast to coast, worked for some great companies, and had some really nice opportunities to work on ecosystem initiatives. With public-private sort of partnering, and sort of learned a few things along the way. And I wanted to take the experience that I had in operating CDMO. Solving for customer experience, but also the experience that I had in ecosystem building to South Florida, because there's a lot of interesting things happening in South Florida right now. GBI has been around, though, for a while, 30 years in business. We've served over probably 200 customers at this point, worked on 400, 500 different large molecule programs. A few years ago, got into stem cells and exosomes. And so we do a lot of things, everything from designing the gene sequence for the protein all the way through putting drug in a vial. We do all of that under one roof here in Plantation, Florida. We've got about 60 people right now. And we are heading towards commercial capabilities. We're building out our QMS and getting ready for commercial scale. We just installed a 2,000-liter facility inside of our one roof facility. We now can go all the way from 50-liter, actually 5-liter scale. We'll talk about that. 5-liter scale, that's a new scale for us, all the way through 2,000-liter scale, single-use bioreactors for antibodies. And then for stem cells and exosomes, we're in a 2D format. So happy to talk more about some of those things as we go along today.
That's great. 30 years is a long time. To really have a business like that. I'm sure learned a lot and grown along the way. Where did the company start from? Was it has always been in contract manufacturing?
The history is interesting here. The founder of Geico Insurance actually started a research institute, the Goodwin Institute of Research for Cancer. That has now moved on to a local university, but that research institute was the foundation of GBI. It used to be Goodwin Biotechnology for a very long time, and recently, maybe in the last 5 years, the name was changed to GBI. But yeah, it started out as sort of a passion project for Geico Insurance founder, and grew from there. They're passionate about healthcare, human healthcare, and they were looking at antibodies as the future, and that was 30 years ago. And so we've done a lot of work since then to grow and establish ourselves here as a very reliable partner for, I would say, clinical scale primarily, but now moving towards commercial. But we're really known for bioconjugation. That's really what we've emerged in the marketplace as. We do a lot of bioconjugation projects, everything from transchelations to working with radio pharma, working with different types of tags. But that's what we're really good at, is sort of scaling that up, closing the process, and making that very compatible with their supply chains.
Yeah. So Jesse, you've just joined. You obviously have a strong background in the CDMO space. What are some of the trends that you're seeing in this space, just in general, as a partner to a lot of companies that are growing and commercializing? Like, what are some of those trends, and how are you kind of bringing that into kind of where GBI is today and going to?
Yeah. So great question. I think one of the trends that I've sort of noticed over the last, I guess, 5 or 6 years, maybe a little bit more, it's moving away from large scale manufacturing and sort of the emergence of the small scale, rapid turnaround GMP manufacturing that's designed to support the growing kind of early stage biologics pipeline. The traditional model of CDMO was, filling up their 2,000 to 20,000 liter facilities. That's still there. I mean, the big providers are still there, but I think there's been a shift in sort of the expectation of the U.S. biotechnology company, or our customers. I need something that's more compelling. I need something that I can get to the clinic for less than $5 million. I need to go faster, and you guys aren't giving me anything to work with here with my budget. So I'm going to go over to Wuxi. I'm going to go to China. I'm going to go somewhere else where it's more cost effective. And I think the opportunity is now where the US CDMO has to be more creative, more imaginative, more responsive to the needs of the market. And so smaller scale is a trend. Getting smaller scale, getting more nimble, getting agile, multimodality capabilities come to mind as well. Designing facilities that are flexible, so that a customer doesn't really have to go to too many vendors to get the services that they need. So we're looking at all of those things, looking at the right scale for us that makes sense for our customer base. Also making our facility very flexible, agile, just in terms of being able to handle the broad range of modalities that are out there right now.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with that kind of shift. Their CDMOs do need to have this flexibility. I mean, even just this past month, several bills were put in front of Congress, right, around the importance of emerging of our industry and being able to compete and move faster and more agile and flexible. So I think that's a signal that I think is probably spot on with where we need to be. So how does that look in practice? Like, so what does that look like for GBI? Do you have new platforms or services you're bringing to fruition to accomplish that?
Yes. So of course we've got the traditional single-use bioreactors that you're going to find, everything from 50-liter scale all the way to 2,000-liter scale. We have that here installed at GBI. We do perfusion, making sure that we have a platform for that, making sure we have platforms, really robust platforms for fed batch. All of those things save time and money. If you can improve the predictability of your CMC outsourcing, you're meeting the needs of the customer. The customer just needs to know, how long is this going to take? How much am I going to get? How much is it going to cost? And that needs to be reliable. And of course, underpinning all of that, you have to have quality. Quality has to be there. But 50-liter scale these days is actually too big for some projects. What I've noticed over the last few years is there's a lot of interest in, say, seeking out some clinical trial scope in Australia, lining up 2 or 3 patients just to get some kind of early proof of concept on, say, a bispecific, not needing a tremendous amount of product. Of course, it's very expensive to get a very small amount of product from a 50-liter or a 500-liter single-use bioreactor and run that whole process. So the question that I've had in our leadership team has had here is there a different way we can do early clinical stage, early clinical phase 1 material generation? So it's really thinking outside of the box, and we have a lot of partners in our discussion. It's not just um, a, um, an exercise in sort of self-reflection. It's actually reaching out to other providers and getting a consensus on what is needed and how can we get there. And we came up against or we came across an opportunity to probably within the next, I would say, 2 months or so, to launch a new service that we call Smart Scale GMP Solutions. And these are basically very small scale drug substance into GMP drug product in a vial. It's a platform that features different production technology that you're not going to find in most CDMOs. Very, very small scale um, equipment and production vessels that are unique, I'd say, in the CDMO industry, but very simple in their design, so easy to execute. And we partnered with a company in California for access to a state-of-the-art cell line development tool that allows us to make stable pools, so we can defer the single cell cloning, which takes a long time and a lot of resources and money. We can defer that, use stable pools, push stable pools all the way through GMP material production, release that as a batch in a much lower price point. You get less material, but you also have it, GMP quality, safe material that you can take into the clinic, get your early sort of human translational data, and then from there decide whether to proceed into kind of a larger scope phase 1 program. That's what we're offering. Again, it's Smart Scale GMP, and it's a combination of very small scale drug substance production coupled with on-site hand fill, very small volume hand fill for drug product. We've been doing hand fills for a very long time. We have ISO 5 dedicated areas for hand fill and a separate for an automated fill. But the hand fill is really, we're kind of the only game in town for the small volume fill. And that's really what is, I think, what is going to be adding a lot of value to these clients that just don't have a lot of material to spare. They need to go fast. They need flexibility, and they need the right price point.
Sounds like it sounds like a need that you're absolutely filling, and I hear it. We work with a lot of early stage companies right now, so I think you're spot on that. And the investment landscape too is kind of favoring this early proof point of data. And so kudos to that. I'm excited. You said coming just in the next couple months then.
Yes, we're out there working with some early clients that are very, very interested. And so we're putting together the CMC work packages for that. What's in scope, what's out of scope. We're consulting with some folks in Australia as well to understand what the CMC requirements are for some of the early clinical phase programming over there. Mm-hmm. So really trying to thoughtfully put together an offering that gets the price down, meets the needs, and it helps our clients. We also have a really good partner on the regulatory side in the DC area, and working with them to really just check everything out, make sure that we have something that's really compelling. It's going to be very useful and add a lot of value to the client. And this is not something we are inventing we're not the pioneers in this. This is certainly pools, for example, into the clinic has been done before. So that pathway of, using a stable pool, getting into the clinic, that's been done before. Pools have been scaled up to thousands of liters. So we know that pools are a good cell substrate for some of these programs. And again, it's all risk-based, and the clients will have a choice ultimately whether to pick that platform or whether to pick something that's a little bit more traditional that we offer as well, just out of a stirred tank bioreactor.
Yeah, well, that's really exciting. Well, so Jesse, you're building on that, so again, you've been very busy in the first 6 months, it sounds like. So building on that, there's a lot happening, industry wide around scale and speed to market. But in Florida also, right? One of the things I wanted to talk to you about is some of the things happening in the Florida ecosystem that GBI and you all really have your thumb on. And some of that, and that's really around like the stem cell and regenerative medicine space, right? And that was kind of the headline for today's conversation as well. Really understanding what is happening that's really creating this additional demand for this other area of stem cell production. So let's talk about that a little bit. So the thing happening in Florida is really the right to try law that Florida has now adopted. So could you tell our audience about what that is and really how GBI has responded to it?
Yeah, I think the lawmakers in the state of Florida recognize that there's an opportunity with Floridians. Let's keep it focused on Floridians. There's an opportunity to be on the cutting edge of this regenerative medicine space by offering them access to the regenerative medicine modalities that have been in the clinic for many, many years. There's a lot of folks that are going outside of the United States to get treatments, whether it's for wound care, chronic pain, inflammation, orthopedic repair. Those types of indications or application areas are what folks go out of the country to get treatments for. And these treatments are invariably some kind of mesenchymal stem cell derivative, bone marrow, or umbilical cord. And so the state of Florida lawmakers recognize that that the state of Florida, with the right infrastructure and the right laws, could allow for those patients to stay in the United States and get those treatments here. Where there's been a lot of medical tourism over the years in the state of Florida in terms of the aesthetics, things like platelet treatment, things like that. So it's an interesting time I'd say in the United States, where you're starting to see some states sort of creating provisions for physicians to make the choice on behalf of their patients, whether or not to administer these types of regenerative medicines. And the law just requires that the physicians are practicing in the space of wound care, in chronic pain or orthopedics. So the doctors that prescribe these medicines have to be practiced in those spaces, in those areas. And then the law basically allows them to administer. Now, the bottleneck that I think wasn't quite sorted out yet is the supply chain for these products isn't very robust right now. So in the state of Florida, there's not that many facilities that manufacture safe versions of these drugs. These medicines are, the concern is that it's cell banks. So the barrier to entry is not as high probably as recombinant protein, because you're basically taking a cell bank from a source of that cell bank from a compliant vendor for those types of products, which are donor derived. So you have to follow all the regulatory requirements for donor eligibility. You get their vial and then you expand it. It's basically a cell banking exercise, and you release it per whatever the specifications are. So there's facilities probably in the state of Florida that can make these cell banks, but I think that there's a lot of risk in in some of those operations not being compliant with, say, FDA 351. So we operate under 351 framework. So when the FDA comes to inspect us, it's a different setup. rather than 361. So, the controls, the quality control, the quality oversight, the safety implications are much different from facilities that are not operating under 351. So we feel like we can contribute to this movement by being a provider. So our customers come to us; they are ultimately the what we call the supplier of stem cell medicine to clinics, to physicians who buy these vials and administer to patients. And this is a cash only kind of business right now. So the patients pay cash for these types of medicines. Very, very expensive. But part of that cost is in the cost of production. And that's what we all want to solve. Right now, we want to make them safe. We want to make sure that doctors have access to safe medicines that have been produced under full GMPs. And that's what we can do. That's how we can help. But we also are trying to raise awareness with our lawmakers, our partners in Tallahassee, about the constraints that are there. And not everybody has access to this medicine because it's so expensive. So, but if we could switch to a different mode. So right now we grow cells. Cell banking is more or less in a two-dimensional format. It's a 2D process in a cell stack type of format. Just in static incubators, and that's where we produce these. But you could switch to a 3D format, go into a stir tank bioreactor with plastic beads, and the cells can grow on the surface of the beads because these are surface growing cells. Switching to 3D would allow us to make many, many more vials per year. Right now, we could probably handle about 10,000 vials per year. If we went to 3D, even just 50-liter scale bioreactors, we could, depending on the cadence of our schedule, we could probably pump out 500,000 to 1 million vials a year. And that is going to drive down the costs significantly. And in the state of Florida, for wound care, chronic pain, orthopedics, there's about 5 million people that would benefit from this type of medicine. So really, I think we're just at the beginning of something really interesting in the state of Florida. I think already 4 other states have sort of templated the law, and they're implementing that elsewhere. So I'm proud that GBI, because we're experienced in stem cell production, because we're experienced in exosomes and HCTPs, we are able to kind of come to the table with the capability and mainly the assurance of safety, that these medicines are going to be safe and that the doctors will have access to safe medicine. And then we start getting feedback from the market. Are these drugs really working? And I think this is where it starts. You're going to start to hear good outcomes and clinical outcomes. And so we have a lot of that. That's, I would say, the ecosystem that surrounds that is very, very interesting. Very, very, it's multifaceted. There's a lot of stakeholders right now.
Yeah.
And we're in the mix. We're talking to everybody. We're all sort of, everybody's super transparent, about what it takes to get there, and everybody has a little bit of a different need at the table, and we're all trying to work together to figure out, how to make this happen in the state of Florida for maybe 5 million people a year.
Yeah, and I can imagine too, medical tourism will grow if there's more safety built around it. So I think like this to me is like, this is how ecosystems really grow, right? There's opportunities where government put common sense type laws, and industry has common sense type partnerships that support each other, right? So there's this collaboration, and GBI is really, I know you're a contract manufacturer and CDMO, but really in this situation, you guys are an infrastructure partner, right? The infrastructure needed for this to grow and flourish in Florida really is a established, reputable partner that can bring the expertise, the equipment, the technical trained, people to enable, again, this boom to happen. Without the infrastructure, you can't get to where you need to go. So that's how I see it in our conversation. There's this element of infrastructure that you all are playing.
Yeah. And I would extend your statement a little bit to the term capability. So we bring capability to the table, which is a combination of infrastructure plus people and know-how and processes and quality systems, um, and an extensive array of vendors and contractors that support us. And it's a very complex like fabric. When you are a GMP operation, you rely on a lot of third parties to come in and calibrate your systems and help you with third party testing. And we've established all of these relationships over many, many years. And we've optimized it over time to try to reduce our turnaround time on batch release and those types of things. So yes, it is infrastructure. And that's one of the capital intensive things is the infrastructure. But then you have to think about the people. You have to think about the actual processes that you develop. I think the other capability, the other piece to that is, of course, workforce. And I think that Florida has some, I would say, some things to learn from other states, like where I come from, Oklahoma, Massachusetts. I'm actually from the Northeast. From your part of the world, from Texas, there's a lot of workforce training centers that have been built up in the U.S. I think 6 or 7 of them, and a lot of them are kind of, I would say, standardizing now in terms of NIST, in standardizing the curriculum and the way things are taught, way these facilities are built. I think Florida could really benefit from having a good partnership with one of these facilities, and NCTM, for example, in Texas, or BTech in I think it's North Carolina, BioTC in Oklahoma. These are great facilities with a lot of capital in the ground, a lot of equipment. Florida doesn't have that right now. We could benefit from that. So I think that's something that lawmakers should be thinking about, is how do I maybe provision capital over time to build such a facility in the state of Florida so we can make sure we have a workforce that keeps up.
Yeah, I would definitely double tap on that, because I think, you look at even, again, with the wave that's coming, right? And with the work that you all are doing, especially around regenerative medicine, and that could really be a substantial economic growth factor for the bioeconomy there. And if you look at these catalytic events like this, other states do kind of invest around that. So Ohio, for instance, they've had some really good growth in their biomanufacturing, and they just put forth over $30 million for a training center, in which a lot of companies kind of came to the table to support this, right? You saw the same thing in Virginia, right? Virginia just over the past year, you had Merck and Eli Lilly and AstraZeneca commit, over $11 billion of investment, and all three put in money for $120 million training center. So you can't have the workforce really. You can't have the industry grow without the workforce, and there's chicken and egg too factor, right? You kind of have to start a little earlier before the final brick gets laid and the top out party happens, in order to make sure it's there. So, and Florida has a lot. I mean, maybe in terms of workforce, I know a lot of people that will move to Florida quite a bit, right? So you do have a draw, right? There's aside from good jobs, there's a draw down there. So building that as a complement, I think, could be very valuable. But where do you see, talk in the last couple minutes of our conversation here, tell us about what is the economy like? What is the biotech, ecosystem like in Florida? I know there's a couple pockets and hubs within Florida, and Dade and Broward are doing a lot. So can you educate us a little bit on what you're seeing on the ground there in Florida?
Well, I'll try my best. We have, I would say, kind of we have the cosmetics industry, which is this aesthetics. That's sort of like this foundational thing that's here. A lot of jobs here, a lot of companies that are making components for that. A lot of supplements, companies that are manufacturing supplements and pills and these kinds of things. So there's a lot of that in the state of Florida. So when I reach out to the talent pool and try to recruit, probably 8 times out of 10, I'm getting people who are trying to transition into the biologics industry from small molecule or from the supplements industry. So it's not exactly where it needs to be right now. We need more for as far as the workforce goes, but there's certainly a lot of capital going into the ecosystem in Florida. A lot of investment coming into the state. You're starting to see some stem cell companies pop up, some mesenchymal stem cell companies. These are the suppliers for stem cells. So people moving from other states even to set up their headquarters here. So we're seeing some of that. They reach out to us to understand more about the supply chain. Um, there are, University of Miami is it's a tier one research facility. They coupled with UF. I mean, just two powerhouses in the state in terms of getting government money to fund the foundational research dollars that go into the university and then outcome ultimately um, you know, NIH funded programs or things that can spin out and get, backed by venture. That's Miami and University of Florida, two powerhouses for sure. And so we have, I see a lot of interesting things happening, in Miami. And we have some good connections there, and we're trying to keep tabs on that. It's not where sort of Boston is or San Francisco in terms of the startup ecosystem in biologics. It's really not, it's not comparable at all. But there's a lot of capital down here, and so because there's a lot of capital down here, it just means that the conversations are happening around Florida, and it keeps us connected, to where the money's going. We figure out, where the money is going, and then we can go after those projects, no matter where those companies are located. I think one of the things that makes Florida interesting, if you're a, say, person in plant or you're doing your manufacturing somewhere, is it's just it's a different part of the country to be in for your manufacturing. It's not that common. A lot of CDMOs are Northeast and the sort of the DC area. Not a lot of manufacturing is happening here in biologics. So it is a unique sort of, okay, let's put GBI on the list and let's go check that out. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of, I would say, a lot of interest because we're uniquely located just geographically. It doesn't hurt that we're near the beach as well, 10 minutes away, from the beach. The PIPs love that. So it's an interesting time here. I'd say a lot of noise around the stem cell research, and the fact is we've been around for 30 years, so we don't really have to say we're new. Like we've been around, and we've been able to survive in this business for a long time, regardless of our location. We have a good reputation for drug substance, drug product, and bioconjugation. So I'm happy to be here and continue to help grow the ecosystem here, bring more customers to Florida. We have a lot of really interesting things to offer the early stage biotechs. I think very uniquely positioned in that space with our new Smart Scale GMP, and happy to talk to you more in the future. Hopefully we'll give you some more updates in the future.
Absolutely. Well, we're definitely going to stay in touch. So as soon as the Smart Scale is live in a couple of months, we'll reconnect with you around that. My, fun fact about me, Jesse, my wife was born in Plantation, Florida. So I get down there quite a bit. Her grandmother and family still lives there, and her brother's in Boca. So I visit Roy quite a lot. So I can advocate for everything Jesse says about Florida being a great place to visit. And, it's interesting. I mean, listening to you talk about Florida and I work with a lot of different ecosystems, and it's often the opposite. We've got a lot of IP and we've got a lot of startups. We have no capital.
Yeah.
And you guys, it sounds like, are an opposite. We've got a lot of capital around. But and we've got some infrastructure with GBI, and we've got some innovation coming out of UF and University of Miami, but we just don't have the kind of the ecosystem yet. So it sounds like, again, a lot of the ingredients are there, and it's great to see that an industry leader like yourself is down there and kind of now advocating for the rest of the growth of the ecosystem. So really appreciate you sharing your perspective with us today, and again, letting us know some of the things that you're working on right now. Agility, speed, flexibility. I think all across the U.S., if we don't solve for that, no matter what, we're competing with China, and we're going to lose jobs no matter what. So I think I'm excited to follow along and see how that goes, because I think it's important for all of us.
Well, thank you so much, Chris. Appreciate your comments as well.
Yeah.
And thanks for the opportunity today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Well, thank you all for joining us today's conversation around BioFlorida and GBI and the work that Jesse and his team are doing. Please, I hope you will all stay informed. Make sure you subscribe either on Luma or LinkedIn. Coming up on our next episode, we have Mike Steele out of Activation Capital in Virginia. So they got a nice ecosystem in the Richmond area they're working on. So hope you'll join us for that next episode. Until then, have a wonderful day. And Jesse, thank you again for your time.
Bye, Chris.